The concept that the planet is very fragile really came out of Rachel Carson's book. Silent Spring sounded the alarm that we were destroying the life support system of the planet. The book was a sensation. It was printed in over 30 languages.
Rachel Carson has to get the main credit for the modern environmental movement because she was the first one to point out one of the really serious environmental problems. That was the overuse of pesticides. It was the right moment, the right book, and the right personality. Although the pesticide industry tried to demonize her, Rachel Carson didn't demonize easily.
Unless we do bring these chemicals under better control, we are certainly headed for disaster. The balance of nature is built of a series of interrelationships between living things and between living things and their environment. You can't just step in with some brute force and change one thing without changing a good many others. Now, this doesn't mean, of course, that we must never interfere, that we must not attempt to tilt that balance of nature in our favor. But when we do make this attempt, we must know what we're doing. We must know the consequences.
There was an ugly backlash after the book came out. The chemical industries were calling her a hysterical woman that didn't know what she was talking about.
The major claims in Miss Rachel Carson's book, Silent Spring, are gross distortions of the actual facts, completely unsupported by scientific experimental evidence and general practical experience in the field. Ms. Carson maintains that the balance of nature is a major force in the survival of man, whereas the modern chemist, the modern biologist, the modern scientist believes that man is steadily controlling nature.
Something that we all thought of prior to her is better living through chemistry, in a sense. You're pouring this stuff on your crops and you're producing more crops, and it really was not something that you thought, my goodness, people are intentionally poisoning the environment, and that those poisons might not be as selective as they're telling us.
Rachel Carson was incredibly scrupulous in the creation of Silent Spring. She understood that we are organisms as much as the birds whose songs were being silenced. She wrote not only a tremendously informative book, but an incredibly moving book. And she did it while she was suffering from cancer.
There was a controversy that raged really until her death. It was still going on, and that was kind of sad because she was a shy person. She was not a crusader. She was a scientist.
There appears to be growing concern among scientists as to the possibility of dangerous long-range side effects from the widespread use of DDT and other pesticides.
President Kennedy's Science Advisory Group reported that Rachel Carson's method of research was sound and her findings and conclusions were generally correct. President Kennedy backed Rachel Carson.
I think particularly, of course, since Miss Carson's book, but...
and that put the chemical industry on the defensive.
I truly believe that we in this generation must come to terms with nature. And I think we're challenged, as mankind has never been challenged before, to prove our maturity and our mastery, not of nature, but of ourselves.
of sunlight to moonlight, reflections of my life.